Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm here to share with you thoughts on a film for 31 Days of Horror 2019, and I'm really excited about this one, but it is going to be a spoilery one, because I'm going to be talking about Sinister 2, so fair warning, not only is this it's not so much spoilery about Sinister 2. Actually, it will be spoilery about Sinister 2, but it will spoil Sinister 1. And, like, legit, Sinister is a great movie. I did talk about it, if I'll find the link and I'll put it up above. I did talk about it years ago. I found it really scary. I don't know if I watched it for a previous 31 Days of Horror, just like randomly. And I would strongly recommend watching it without knowing anything about it and not watching this review, because even, like, the poster, anything I say will spoil the first one, and I enjoyed the first one better by far. The second one was still enjoyable, but the first one was great. So this is going to be a spoiler heavy one entry for 31 Days of Horror, and it's going to start with that right now because I am going to show the poster. So Sinister 2. Okay, this was directed by Ciarán Foy. The writers were Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, which are the same writers for the first film, which I was slightly surprised about, actually. The cast includes James Ransone, Shannyn Sossamon, Robert Daniel Sloan, and Dartanian Sloan. It came out in 2015. It is definitely of the horror genre, without question, but I would also say it is also a thriller, and this definitely goes into the land of supernatural and or paranormal. And my rating for this, I initially had it at 7.5 out of 10, but I'm gonna put that down to 7 out of 10, 3.5 out of 5, and no heart, or a half heart if there were half hearts. This one is a bit of a challenging one. So as I mentioned, I have to talk about Sinister to talk about Sinister 2. And it's one where you never know with horror sequels, and in terms of a horror sequel, it was great. But it wasn't as great as it could have been. I felt like there were just a couple of things about it that I wish they hadn't done, or effects that they didn't use, or just, it was like one of those things. I watched this with my sister Susie, and we watched Sinister like the week before, and then we watched Sinister 2 together. They were both first time watches for her. Sinister was a rewatch for me, so which was really exciting, and I was really excited to share it with her. We like watching scary movies together, and it's such a good one. But one of the things, like, I feel like it built on the strengths of Sinister, which is fine, but I felt like it didn't bring tons of new strengths to it. There were some things, but it really, some of the things it did almost as good as the original, but I felt like it didn't at any point excel past the first one, and I felt like the first one had a lot of originality to it and this one didn't. So that is really challenging. So Sinister and Sinister 2 both follow like and it does have some super creepy themes, which, as you can probably tell from the poster, is creepy kids, or kids doing the creepiness, which is quite a dark theme for horror, and I think it does it well. And the reason why, hopefully, people watching are only ones who have watched Sinister, because one of the things that Sinister does so well is that you don't know who's doing things, and it is quite a shocking reveal for it to be kids. Now, so going into Sinister 2, we know that this is the case, or unless you didn't watch the first movie. So that it does play up more into the lore created in the first film, which was talking about some kind of entity that would lure children in to do horrible things to their family. And it sort of travels like home to home, backwards. Like when people move, there's a connection between people moving and then like living one place and then moving to another. So that's something that's established in the first film. And so in this film, I thought they did a lot of really clever things. We started off with Shannyn Sossamon and her two boys. I don't know if they're twins. That was one thing that I found a little challenging, because they felt so close in age, but they didn't look alike, so they weren't identical twins. But they also didn't have a very twinish relationship, but that's not revealed right away. Like, the relationship between the two brothers, I thought, was one of the best things done in the film, because you don't know where it's going to go, and it builds it, like, it works with your incorrect assumptions, and so I thought that that was all done very well. I did like Shannyn Sossamon in this one. It was wild. I haven't seen her in anything for a while. I think a lot of people know her, like me, from A Knight's Tale, you know, and this one, some of the joys of this one were with her, and also James Ransone son, who was Deputy So-and-so. It was the reprisal of Deputy So-and-so, which was so unexpected. Like, he's a character from the first film. He never gets a name because Ethan Hawke just calls him Deputy So-and-so. And in this film, like, he doesn't get a name, but he found out about what was going on a little bit, and then he's the one who sort of takes the reins to try and figure out and destroy and combat this like entity that is luring children to do horrible things. And the violence in this is huge, like it's high, and this takes it much further than the first film. And the first film, I felt like I felt like it couldn't be taken further. The deaths and the violence and the horribleness in the first film is extreme, and this goes far further, which I felt it was actually a detriment. Like, there were a couple of the deaths that they show that I felt was too far. I don't want those ideas circulated. Yeah, so it takes it to more torture porn level to me, and then you're also involving that the people doing this are kids. Ugh. But where I felt like that kind of stuff where it really went wrong is that I felt I didn't feel that the kids in the first film felt like, I don't know, like they felt you didn't understand them, but you believed it. In this one, we learn more about them, but I didn't believe it. Like, they kept on trying to get the brother to do the thing, you know, and they kept on pushing him and bullying him into it. And I didn't feel like that resonated with the story that was told in the first one because of his resistance. Because when we see the kids in the first film, they feel very much like they want to be doing what they're doing. And there's this sort of careless joy about it, like not knowing it's wrong. In this film, he knows it's wrong. And you get so I don't understand, and they don't seem to be careless or joyful. So that was a bit of a disconnect. And then also, not to get nitpicky, but I'm going to get nitpicky, is that I felt like the effects of the kids, like what they look like, they were tangible. And I didn't think that they should be tangible. And so that just didn't read to me. And so a lot of the nitpicks I have are about that, like just the visual effects in terms of both the kids and the entity, just how it seemed, and it was different than the first one, and the perspective, not the entity so much because it was still mysterious and stuff, but the kids, they seemed like people in a room. They didn't seem like they were ghosts or spirits or in between worlds or anything like that. Like, they weren't there and then they were there. So it was kind of like, So anyway, but I love the stuff with Deputy So-and-so and Shannyn Sossamon's character, and I love the conflict with the kids and like the story of their family and all of the personal human dynamics that they have. But that was also, again, a huge strength in the first film, with the family dynamics and the conversations they had, and like when they would get into like sort of mini arguments or arguments and fell back and forth, like all of that stuff was the same goodness, but it wasn't to the same level as we found it from the first film. So this was one of the ones that was a bit weird because like when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, that was good. And for a horror sequel, oh yeah, that was good. But like, I felt like the first one was so much better. And like, I didn't want it, and where it went further, I didn't like, and what it changed, I didn't like. So I don't know, like, I don't know what I was looking for in a sequel for this one. And as I mentioned, it's much better than a lot of other horror sequels. And I did still find it scary. The entity is very scary. The ideas are very scary. There's also some real world scary stuff too in this one, in terms of the family dynamics with the family that it's centered on, and it's another creepy location, you know, and so like, and just visually creepy, and I'm sure there were jump scares, I can't remember, but I'm sure there were jump scares. So it had a lot of stuff like that, but I felt like it didn't push the envelope, but not in the way I would have liked. I would have liked it be story as opposed to gruesomeness. And but I love seeing Deputy So-and-so. Like, that is what, like, that he's such a great character, and he has great timing, and it's a really different take on things, and yeah, so that part I really enjoyed him, and I did find it scary. So it's a bit of a weird one because I feel like I'm not, I really did like think, oh, it's an 8, and then I think I gave Sinister an 8 or maybe an 8.5, and then I was like, well, it's not as good as Sinister, and so I put it at 7.5. I'm like, and then as I keep thinking about it, it goes lower. So, but it's one of those things. I sometimes when you're talking about series, I don't know if it's more interesting or valuable to rank them in order of the series as opposed to individual ratings. And the ratings are subjective, and I might change. I don't usually change them over time, but I think this one I did. I think I put it at something, and I was like, and I didn't love it. I loved Sinister, but I couldn't heart this one. It went too far. Excuse me, it went too far. It went too far. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Sinister 2. So that was an all spoiler one, so there shouldn't be too many of those happening in 31 Days of Horror, but sometimes with sequels, you just can't escape it. So thank you. Let me know your thoughts on Sinister 2, and I'll see you in the next one.